Hello, everyone. My name is Petyo Budakov, and I'm a chief assistant professor at the New Bulgarian University, Sofia, a visiting professor at Brand Academy, Hamburg, and a co-founder of BF Studio, an advertising agency which is active in Berlin and in Sofia. I'm very honored and privileged to be here, and I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Tallinn University and School of Digital Technologies, especially to Dr. David Lamas for inviting me. Well, throughout the history, humans have attempted to communicate with science for thousands of years, and the use of pictures to convey messages have evolved to the modern pictograms. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Please have a look at these funny slides. Pictograms must be designed to get right to the heart of the matter by visually representing its image, which is really very accurate. Sure, how many words for toilet do you know in English? Restroom? Lavatory? What else? Well, we often use WC. What else? Sometimes bathroom. Designers could have used some very simple words in order to represent the toilets, but instead, the creative minds that stands behind these clever creations decided that toilets deserve something better than that. The only one problem is that sometimes they are so creative that you may struggle to find the right place if you have had a beer or 7. Can you guess where is the man and the woman toilet? Man on the right, correct. All right. Another example. As I already mentioned, they're really very creative and must visually represent comprehensible messages. Female, male. All right, another project that is developing right now. You see, some of them are using really very interesting visual motifs, and they're segregated between the male and the female in order to visualize them and to grab the human's attention. However, the pictograms appeared around 30,000 years before Christ in the form of cave paintings. And it's believed that the first were found in Lascaux cave in France. France has a particular large concentration of cave paintings, although a lot of cave paintings were found in Spain, in Australia. Lascaux cave, an example of the first pictorial signs. However, pictorial signs were used to improve the human communication. And we can distinguish 3 different groups of signs, like auditory signs, which consists of alarm clock, siren, let's say half-time whistle, visual signs, body language, illustrations, we already seen something like that. Circumstances. About the tactile signs, we've got braille, handshake, keys for touch typing. I'm going to give you some examples right now, but before, I wanted to tell you that pictograms and icons have one thing in common. Both of them are pictorial signs. Pictograms are used to protect, guide, warn the peoples, and need to be immediately decipherable. What about this pictogram? No entry for birds. Will the birds understand it? Well, sometimes they could be very confusing, like this, the first one. The hand means prohibition. But the green background at the same time means go. So it leads to the conclusion that pictograms must be very accurate. They must be designed to get right to the heart of the matter, to be internationally recognizable and independent of culture. According to Collins' dictionary, a pictogram is an image created by people with the purpose of quick and clear communication without language and words, in order to draw people's attention. So they usually represent one very clear and concrete fact that could be information, direction, or prohibition. You see, prohibition, body language. Anyway, I would like to point out one really very crucial fact here, that about pictograms must always represent one, and to convey one fact. If there is more than one fact, we run the risk to confuse the people, to confuse the users around us. Let's consider the application of the pictograms into the signage systems. What's the signage systems? We can see it everywhere around us. Can you give me an example for a signage system here around us? Exactly. In case of emergency. So the signage system, it's a visually oriented system that guide the people's passages through the physical world. We got. So the pictograms are used to replace the written communication, to express some regulatory, mandatory, warning, and prohibitory information, to help the people with limited linguistic abilities. Or, when there is a legal obligation to express something, to design pictograms like that. The pictograms must be identified at a single glance, at a greater distance, at a greater speed than the words. They must be attention-grabbing, to increase the user's awareness of risk, and to be better stored in our memory, to enable us to recall them in a particular time. I'd like to show you some of the pioneers of the development of the semiotics, which are Ferdinand de Saussure and Charles Peirce. So both of them focused on the three main aspects of the sign, which is the symbolic, indexical, and the iconic one. Let's consider three of them. The symbol. Obviously, there is no logical meaning between the symbol and its object. I wanted to give you an example with a circle with a cross, with the circle with a line. It always means what? Prohibition, yeah, exactly. But it's because the sender and the receiver are agree on that meaning. So in order to have a clear and effective communication, sender and receiver must firstly agree on the meaning of the symbol. The arbitrary nature of the symbols could be observed into the second example, the red cross. What does it symbolize? Switzerland? Well, it stands for the International Red Cross Organization since 1863, where 5 men established the International Red Cross Organization in Geneva in order to help the wounded soldiers. And they adopted the inverse of the Swiss national flag in order to communicate neutrality and peace. I wanted to pay your attention about the index. What is the index about? It described the pointer that designates. We have a door. The door which is bearing this icon means that behind the door you find the lavatory. Just the index has a direct spatial and temporal relation with the physical world. Another example, we have another door here, and another sign which is in front. Another example for an index, because it's physically related with the weather circumstances. No U-turn, it's a very famous one. And it's put on a background, which means it's a traffic sign. Icon. What's the icon? Icon physically resembles to its object. And the degree of convergence, it's called degree of iconicity. On the other hand, the degree of divergence, it's called degree of abstraction. I wanted to give you an example of different interpretations of the icons. Because the icon, it takes its identity from what it designates. Male, female. What else? Coming back to the restrooms, some of them are really very inventive. I know it takes a really important part of the signage system. Different example of icons, you see. The hardest thing is to find the right motifs, to systemize them, and to communicate the right message effectively. For example, these pictograms always brings the same message. You're not allowed to smoke here, correct? It's famous, you know. But I want to show you the relationship between the icon, symbol, and the index. The icon could be even a photo, because it faithfully reproduces the fire extinguisher with a very high degree of iconicity. We have the green letter of F, which could be considered as a symbol. If we together agree on that F would be the symbol of the fire extinguisher, so we can use it. Otherwise, the degree of the correspondence between the green F with the fire extinguisher is too abstract, because green obviously is not a symbol of fire. Well, what about the index? It means that the pictograms pinned on the door means that behind the door you find the fire extinguisher. I'd like to pay your attention on the intention and the purpose of the pictograms. And we can distinguish three main aspects, like indicative, this burning cigarette, which says to the users that he can take a cigarette, but he doesn't have to smoke here as well. It's just indicative one. Imperative, it directly influences the human's behaviors by saying that you're not allowed to smoke here. We have a red wine, open that. Suggestive, the combination between the burning cigarettes and the lungs induce certain feelings that it could cause some severe health problems among the smokers. The conditions that influence the meaning of the signs are surrounding, culture, knowledge, combination of different signs, and special circumstances. I would like to pay your attention about some cultural aspects, but before that, it's really very important to denote the background, the surrounding of the pictograms. If the surroundings change, the meaning of the pictogram also change. You can see in these examples. It's not the same whether you're going to place your pictogram on a fence, on the tree, or just into the book. Well, another example, how we can create the context of the pictograms. We have a surroundings. Already gave an example with the door. We have an icon, burning cigarette. What's the meaning? Smoking room, which means that you can smoke, but you don't have to smoke. It's a smoking room here. No one is obligated to smoke, you know. But without the surrounding, it's just what? Icon. What about with the escalator? We have surroundings, we have an icon, symbol, which obviously this is an arrow showing that the escalator is going down. Well, another example with the surrounding, which is the door. It's really very important to pay our attention on the surrounding around us. The icon, obviously the fire extinguisher, the background and the format, which are not chosen arbitrarily. Why? Because the red symbolizes dangerous, probably fire. Something is going to happen here. So indication behind the door is the fire extinguisher. So from a designer perspective, it's really very important to use a grid in order to create a visual balance between all of these graphic elements. And into the next example, which we already have here, it's about the surrounding. This is the corridor. Person who's running away from a fire, it's an icon which is very famous around the world. Symbol showing the way. Symbol, it's really very important to include some colors, and it's a green because it symbolizes safety. Indication, in an emergency, take this way. So when we're creating a pictorial message, it's important to follow the workflow, which is about the creation, the reproduction of the message, the distribution among the people, how they're going to consume it, and the reception by individuals, because the behaviors, attitudes has been changing dramatically, and to explore the consumption by culture, which I'm going to pay your attention right now, because if there are any difference in the cultural context, they would entail to difference into the representation. How we can identify these icons, like male and female, segregated by a line which is vertical, and this pictogram, it's very popular in Taiwan. In Brazil, you can see such kind of pictograms there. They are widely popular. You can see that there are a lot of differences. The clothes, even the line which segregates both of the male and the female, it's cut in between. So we have some lettering which could be considered as a disadvantage because the pictograms must avoid using lettering and text. Please grab your mobile phones, browse swai.do, enter the code L461, and please answer the question. I'm really very curious to see what you're going to give as a response. So the question is, this pictogram designates a toilet, and it's widely popular in France, Oman, Argentina, or India. I don't want to check the results right now. Oh, a lot of people are voting for Oman. Have you ever been there? Probably saw such kind of pictograms. Oh, Argentina. Well, India growth. Well, definitely, it's very quickly. 76% among you vote for India. Why India, guys? Can you suggest, please? Why India? Yeah, exactly. So it refers to what? Some cultural aspects. Quotes as being part of the cultural identification. Thank you for voting, by the way. Slovenia. Widely available pictorial signs that designates toilets. Isn't it tricky? Where's the female, where's the male? Sure, why? Okay, it's right. Okay, cool. Yes, but it's true. I'd like to show you how, for example, the bread in Germany is depicted, because it's derived by the famous pretzel, and that's why it's got such an oval form. On the other hand, in France, they have baguette, and the baguette it's depicted like more, spherical form here. Well, I'd like to pay your attention on some pharmaceutical symbols very quickly. Now, Asclepius was one of the Greek gods of the medicine. And his daughter Hygiene was often depicted by holding a cup with a snake coiled around it, which represents the pharmacy industry nowadays, especially in Hungary. This symbol was introduced into the 19th century. And another symbol, the staff with the two snakes around it, were adopted in Europe into the very beginning of the 20th century. And later on, it was replaced by the green cross. Why green? Because the Red Cross, as we already pointed out, was adopted by the International Red Cross Association. Another interesting symbol of the pharmaceutical industry is the mortar and the pestle, which fairly represents the pharmaceutical industry as being a really very important tools. At the end, I'd like to show some students' projects led by me. They were created in China from some freshman students enrolled into the bachelor program of visual communication. So the task was to create pictograms of toilets that are internationally recognizable, but in this time influenced by the local cultures. So you can see some examples of men and women, how they represented the toilets in North America, Europe, South America, Australia, Asia. Another very creative examples about Australia, South America, Asia, and Europe, but I want to screen how the pictograms in South America and Australia, please take into account they used kangaroo. Always to denote Australia, you can see the kangaroo again. Well, there are some differences between the kangaroos, obviously. In Europe, they use the piston rolls. North America, yeah, soccer is being a powerful sport and widely popular among this continent. Asia, again, Europe, Asia playing the guitar, or North America, taking some sandwiches, probably a cup of Coke, or Pepsi. South America, again, Australia. And in the conclusion, in my findings, it turns out that 75% of my students use clothes in order to distinguish the pictograms between each other and to include some cultural influence. As well as 38% among them use some attributes in order to illustrate the difference between different continents there. And on average, 84% of them use a very high degree of abstraction and their iconicity, which means that they try to unleash their creativity as much as they can in order to attract the people's attention. So, take care for your dog, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention.